Hello everyone and welcome to the Captain Jimmy Pie Christmas Special 2016. So I have several good things in store for you this year, but we're going to kick it off with a review. I have made it clear many times that I am not a fan of the 375 range, however for me one of the redeeming features of the range is the Daleks. I've reviewed several new series Daleks, but I've never reviewed any classic ones. Until now. So, I got this for Christmas. I'm actually going to be using these Daleks and in a very special custom, which will be coming soon. But I thought I'd take this opportunity to do this review because I haven't actually reviewed any of the 375 classic Daleks. And this certainly looks like a very nice and promising set. So, let's have a look. So, the box is very well, nicely designed. There's some very interesting details on the interior design, which we will come and look at when I open it up. But I very much like the outside of the box, the style of it. Obviously, we've got some information about the Daleks on the back. I won't read all of that out. Obviously, we've got all the product information underneath. But yeah, the box itself, very well, nicely presented. I have to say, again, not a fan of the 375 range, but as I previously said, one of the redeeming features of these. Of this set, of these figures of this range, are the Daleks. They're very well made, and I have to say this is very well presented as a nice display piece, so they've certainly put some thought in there, but obviously we want to see what's inside it. So let's get a look inside. You need right tools, and I don't have them on me. I never do these properly. Okay. This is not the correct way of opening things. You should do it properly, but it's because I've forgotten my Stanley knife that I'm doing it like this. So, to any younger viewers watching, when you're opening things like this, if you get them for Christmas, please get a responsible adult to help you. So, ta-da! So, yeah, we've got a very nice, interesting inset on the box here, which makes a nice display piece. Now, I really like, before I take them out of the box, I really like this rock design they've done here. Because, now, obviously you've got here, the Daleks are sitting inside these base pieces. While I'm doing this, I'll see if I can take, it's going to be easier to cut that. They are sitting inside this little, whoa. Was that both of them, or just the one? No, that was just the one. They're sitting inside this little base piece, but I have to say, if I take one of them out carefully, now, if you adjusted it so it was sitting on top like that, you could have a really good diorama here in that you've got kind of like, you know, a nice rocky bit, and then you could change this base bit into some kind of hoverbout or something and make it look like they were sort of hovering over something. It would be a really good, little a little diorama piece. I might do something like that myself, actually, thinking about it, but we shall wait and see. But because we are here not to review the packet, we are here to review the Daleks themselves. So I believe they're both the same. These are obviously based on the Emperor's Guard Daleks seen in Evil of the Daleks. There's a little bit, the dome there, I don't know how well you can see that on camera, isn't quite straight. That's a bit of a shame. I don't want to, you know what, actually no, let's not pick too many faults in there. That is quite a large gap, to be fair, which isn't on the other one, which is a bit of a shame, but let's gloss over that. So yeah, the Daleks themselves, very well detailed, very well put together. They feel nice and sturdy in the hand. Nothing really feels loose, even to be fair, even the dome that's slightly off, you know, it feels, it's nice and robust, it's all set in place fine, it doesn't feel like anything is loose on it. So I really think that they've done well with these, because it's very hard, I get the feeling, to capture exactly what you see on screen at sometimes in toys, and I think a good example of this is actually a lot of the range of Thomas and Friends merchandise is that, with a couple of exceptions, namely the Batman models, it's very different to what you see on screen. And I think the smaller scale you go, the harder it is to replicate what you see on screen. Now, these are obviously smaller than the 5-inch Dalek range, but by no means is the quality of design any less on these. They've really put a lot of work into these. They've really thought them out. They've really made them look sort of, as accurate as you could make a toy look, I should say. They've really put a lot of work into those, and I think they deserve the credit. For those people who've seen my Into the Dalek review series, you will know that I was very scathing and at times probably you could say insulting about the 375 range. Now, I still very much stand by what I said in that review, because that particular set, there's a little bit of paint coming off there, that particular set was not a good example of the 375 range. In fact, I still stand by what I said, that set and that review shows what is a perfect example of the bad points of the 375 range. That being said, this set, and indeed the Daleks that came with the Into the Dalek set, are, as I've said before, and as I'm going to say now, in case I haven't said it many times before, are one of the redeeming features of the range. They are, the Daleks are certainly by far the best part in the range, and I fully feel that as much as I dislike the 375 range, I've gotten these and I've opened them up and I look at them and think, these are actually really good. These, you look at the things like the Into the Dalek set where it's all made of cardboard and you just think this is just terrible. But then you look at the Daleks you got in the set, with the possible exception of Rusty, but you look at the Daleks you got in the set and then you look at these and you think, actually, okay, they can't do sets. They can't do play sets, that's clear and evident. And the figures, like human figures, not that great. But the Daleks themselves are actually very good. And I really think that I need to give them full credit for that, because this is coming from somebody, as I said, is not a fan of the range, but even I have to concede that there are some parts of the range that work very well. And these Daleks certainly are part of it. I appreciate this was probably quite a short review, but it was obviously not a lot to it. But I just wanted to really make this review just to sort of give some balance to my views on the 375 range. I'm still by no means a fan of it, but I think it's important to talk about the bad points, which I did in the Into the Dalek review set, but I think it's also only fair that I talk about the good points, and the good points are certainly the Daleks in this range. Unfortunately, due to time constraints, a full cast audio series Christmas special was not on the cards this year. However, it gave me the opportunity to do something else I've been planning to do for a while, my own version of the short trips, read in a more conventional audiobook style. In the interest of keeping it Christmassy, this story is actually a prequel to last year's Christmas special. So I present to you Short Trips 1, Trouble in the TARDIS.
The TARDIS, wheezing and groaning, spiraled through the time vortex.
the sound of its movement offset by the faint sound of guitar music echoing from somewhere behind its battered doors. The Doctor tiptoed around the console, trying not to trip over the long, trailing cable that connected his companion's guitar to the console. Nell, doing her best Mick Jagger impression, strutted around the console in the opposite direction, lost in the music and paying no attention to the Doctor's ever-increasing annoyed glares. As she passed him, he deliberately brought his foot down on the trailing cable, and a few seconds later, with a crackle of feedback, the console room fell silent, save for the thrumming sound of the central column rising and falling in time with the TARDIS engines. Nell looked puzzled for a moment before seeing the Doctor's foot on the cable, the end of which he now held in his hand and waggled at her like a disapproving finger. She stuck out her bottom lip and pouted in mock sadness. "I was enjoying that." And then, in a more serious tone, "Besides, what if the Daleks followed us? Better safe than sorry." She twanged the guitar strings in a comic tone. The Doctor was now winding the trailing cable in a loop around his arm. "It's been 3 hours since we left the Dalek command ship. If they followed us, they'd have caught up to us by now." He moved to unplug the cable from the console, but it held fast. He gave it a sharp tug, but nothing happened. "Besides," he said through gritted teeth as he pulled on the cable, "you've been playing that same song for the last 3 hours. I mean, I'm all for long jam sessions, but I like a bit of variety." The cable still refused to budge, so wrapping it around his arm, the Doctor balanced his weight on his back foot and put the other on the edge of the console and pulled with all his might. Nell, who was by this time sitting in the chairs opposite, watched the spectacle with barely suppressed silent mirth. The Doctor, breathless and red in the face, stopped pulling on the cable and leaned forward, resting his hands on the console. He looked up to see Nell sat across from him, feet up on the console, head resting on her hand, the thinly veiled smile on her face now a big, wide grin. "Having fun?" he questioned her irritably. Nell laughed silently as she got up and walked over to him. "You know, you could just ask if you wanted help. So how do you want to do this?" The Doctor wrapped the cable around his arm once again and handed the slack to Nell. "Think of it like a tug of war, except instead of an opposing team, we've got to deal with a time machine that weighs more than the weight of Earth, times 87,694. Nell gritted her feet against the metal floor. "Did you actually know that, or did you just make that figure up?" The Doctor took his sonic screwdriver out of his coat pocket and started fiddling with the buttons on it. "Take a wild guess," he chuckled, just like I did. With his right foot stood firm, he once again put his left foot up on the edge of the console, pulled the cable taut, and pointed his screwdriver at the socket. Behind him, Nell took up the slack. "Right. When I say pull..." Nell laughed under her breath. "Yank on the cable as hard as I can?" The Doctor chuckled. "Something along those lines, yes. Right, ready? Pull!" They both pulled with all of their might. For a moment, nothing happened. Then all of a sudden, there was a sound similar to cracking glass, and a few seconds later, they were sprawled across the console room as the cable finally detached itself from the console. All was silent for a few moments before the console began to hiss, as small jets of steam began to leak through the panels. The engine sound became warped and distorted, and with a sudden jarring crunch, everything fell silent as the lights dimmed and all fell black. Deep in the bowels of the TARDIS, a deep gong sounded, a sound that could only herald the arrival of imminent disaster. It echoed through the corridors, rousing Nell into consciousness. The blackness slowly faded into a pulsing red, which grew to a constant dull light. She got up, groaning. Between falling hard against the wall and the juddering halt of the TARDIS, she'd taken a few knocks, but nothing that wouldn't leave more than a few bruises. She looked around. The Doctor was nowhere to be seen. "Doctor? Doctor, where are you?" From behind the edge of the dais, a rather shaky hand rose up, and after a moment gave a rather strained thumbs up, followed by an equally strained voice. "I'm all right." Reaching up onto the rail that ran around the edge of the dais, the Doctor heaved himself back up to the console level and began pacing around the console, flipping switches and tapping the rotor with his knuckle. After a couple more laps around the console, he stopped and sighed. Although she was sure the Doctor knew what he was doing, Nell couldn't help keep the tone of worry out of her voice. "Is it dead?" The Doctor tugged at his beard in thought. "Dead? No, not as such. Think of it more as a non-living sleep." Nell looked at the still steaming console before looking back to the Doctor. "That sounds a lot like being dead to me. Is there nothing else you can do?" The Doctor took in a breath through his teeth, before a sudden look of inspiration dawned on his face. He took a step back,
swung his leg behind him, and with great force kicked forward, catching the underside of the console with his foot. After a short pause, the look of inspiration disappeared and was replaced by one of intense pain. Nell folded her arms, giving the doctor a look of exasperation. "Did that help?" she asked sarcastically. "No," came the reply after a short pause. She rolled her eyes and asked with even less sympathy, "Did that hurt?" After a slightly longer pause, the doctor, in a more quiet, strained voice, said, "Well, you'd be surprised how often that works. Anyway, I was just getting started." Limping slightly, the doctor walked around the console, one hand running under the edge. Every now and again he stopped, and after a short pause there was a dull clunk, before he returned to his original position on the other side of the console and disappeared underneath it. Nell, who had been standing back, stepped forward and leaned over the console, peering past the central column, watching the doctor's hand pop up every once in a while, push a button here, flick a switch there, before disappearing again. She cleared her throat, and after this failed to get any response, called out, "So, when exactly are you going to tell me what's going on?" She looked around the console room, still bathed in the low red light, the cloister bell ringing out around them. "What do we do, trip the fuses?" There was a sudden spark, a sharp yelp from the doctor followed by a thud, and then a few choice words which thankfully were masked by the cloister bell. The doctor popped up, rubbing the side of his head, wincing slightly. "Yes, sort of. They're more temporal fuses. If the TARDIS detects the console being improperly handled, then it shuts itself down to prevent it from being misused." Nell raised an eyebrow. "That's actually pretty ingenious," she said, impressed. The doctor pressed a few more buttons, and the persistent clang of the cloister bell lowered to a dull, echoing tone from the bowels of the TARDIS. "It is very impressive. Only? Nell's voice quavered. "Don't say only. Say, all I've got to do is flick the switch and everything will be fine." The doctor winced awkwardly. "I could say it, but it doesn't make it true. You see, while the TARDIS is shut down like this, it's just drifting through the vortex, and despite how it might seem, there's a lot of debris out there. Most of it harmless, but sooner or later we'll hit something that isn't. And everything is down, including the shields." Nell sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose in frustration. "So, where exactly does that leave us? How do we reset the..." She was cut off by another loud clanging as the doctor kicked the console again. She looked at him in disbelief as he kicked it twice more before stopping to look at her. "Why?" she asked simply. The doctor knelt down and leant forward, resting his chin on the console, his hands fumbling beneath the edge. "Because we've got to get in there." He motioned with his head towards the center of the console. Nell's look of disbelief turned to one of incredulity. "Wait, inside there? Inside the console?" The doctor grinned widely. "Yep, and best of all, there's only a very slim chance we might die, if I can get this catch open." He strained, leaning back, pulling against it momentarily before with a loud clang it gave, and the doctor fell back against the floor. That one always sticks." He got up, looked around, and finding nothing to clean his grease-stained hands on, wiped them on the inside lining of his coat. He pointed across the console to a set of buttons in front of Nell. "Now, if you can stand there, and when I say so, press all of the red buttons and hold them down." Nell moved forward and put her hands in place. "What are you going to do?" she asked as the doctor linked his hands together and stretched his arms out, the sound of his knuckles cracking seemingly deafening in the unusual quietness of the console room. "I shall be getting inside there." He pointed to the console. "Highly dangerous even for me. One small slip and it's nighty-night and no more regenerations." Nell gasped. "Wait a moment, isn't there a better way to do this?" The doctor scoffed. "Well, we could go through the TARDIS to the console hub, only..." Nell sighed. "There's that word again." The doctor cleared his throat. "Only I'm not exactly sure where it is now. Just trust me, it'll be fine." And then he added under his breath, "I hope." Nell drew in a deep breath and then let it out slowly. "Well, I'm ready when you are." The doctor fixed her with a piercing stare. "Now remember, when I say so, hold down all of the blue buttons." "Whoa, hang on!" Nell shouted. "A moment ago you said red." The doctor looked thoughtful. "Did I say red?" Nell gave an exasperated gasp. "Yes, Doctor, you said red. Are you sure it's blue?" The doctor grinned. "Yes, absolutely, definitely blue." She replaced her hands over the blue buttons. The doctor looked up again. "Or was it green?" No, definitely blue. 100% sure. Well, 90% sure. Ish." Nell hung her head, sighing deeply. "We are so going to die." She met the doctor's eye, and he gave her a reassuring smile. "Everything will be fine. I wouldn't ask you to do this unless I was absolutely sure it would work." She smiled back. Oh, one more thing, the Doctor chimed up. Be sure to keep your eyes closed until I say so. The light in the console isn't harmful to Time Lord retinas, but humans, well, like they say, never stare at the sun too long or your eyeballs will burst into flames. Nell laughed nervously. I can't say I've heard that one before. The Doctor shivered. Believe me, it's even more unpleasant to witness. He put his hand into his coat pocket and drew out a pair of sunglasses. Just in case, he said, putting them on with a smile. Nell chimed in with a giggle. What are those, sonic sunglasses? The Doctor raised a quizzical eyebrow. Sonic sunglasses. That's the stupidest idea I've ever heard. He tapped the glasses. These are Quadrex polarized filters. Could even withstand extonic light. He glanced at her over the top of them and gave her a wink. And if you're about to die, at least they make you look cool doing it. He smiled again as he put his hand back into his coat and withdrew his sonic screwdriver out of his pocket, and holding it in his teeth, rubbed his hands together, readying himself. Right. Are you ready? Nell shut her eyes tightly and turned her head away. As I'll ever be. The Doctor placed his hands on the underside of the console and readied himself to push the huge console upwards. Okay. Now, he shouted. Nell pushed down on all of the buttons, and slowly the upper half of the console rose up to reveal a burning white light. Even with her eyes shut tight and head turned away, Nell could feel it illuminate the console room like the light of 1,000 suns burning brightly from behind her eyelids. The Doctor, meanwhile, pressed his sunglasses into place and leaned forward into the bright light. He reached out his hand deep inside the mass of wires inside the console until he felt the familiar switch box. Taking his screwdriver out of his mouth, he pulled the box towards him with one hand and pressed the screwdriver against it with the other. The red glow faded, and along with the cloister bell, slowly but surely the lights flickered back on. The bright white light pulsing with a blue tint, and the sound of the time rotor slowly began to thrum again. Can I let go of these buttons yet? Nell called. Not just yet, keep it open a little bit longer, the Doctor replied, as he put the switch box back down into the centre of the console. I'm surprisingly attached both physically and emotionally to my lower half. We do not need separating, thank you. He withdrew himself from the console and, walking around, lifted her hands from the buttons. The console slowly lowered itself back into place. Alright, you can open your eyes now, he said, letting go of her hands, and walking back around the console, resealing the catches with a buzz of the sonic, before finally giving the sticky one another couple of kicks. So that's it? I mean, everything's fine? Nell asked hopefully as she sat down on the chairs near the console. The Doctor swung the scanner screen around, and tapping a few buttons, the display flicked up onto the large scanner screen on the wall. Lines of numbers and diagnostic codes scrolled down the screen. It all looks good to me, said the Doctor, clearly able to not only read at great speed, but also make sense of all the data. Now, let's see where we are relative to the vortex. He tapped a few more buttons before a date appeared on the screen. 24th of December, 7342, he read aloud. Christmas Eve? Nell said with a smile. The Doctor flicked another switch and the data flickered off the screen and returned to its normal spiralling web of symbols that usually filled it. I wouldn't get your hopes up, the Doctor said dismissively. The 74th century was a bit like the reversed Dark Ages. Science took over and they kind of abolished Christmas for 100 years. Nell looked disappointed before her face lit up again. Well, why don't we celebrate Christmas here? In the TARDIS? The Doctor scoffed. No, thank you. She playfully hit him on the arm. Don't be such a Scrooge. Come on, you told me you had loads of Christmas decorations in storage. Which one was it? The Doctor looked up at her and shivered, his skin crawling. Storage 4, he said uncomfortably. You can go there if you want, but I'm staying here, thank you. I've not been in there since... well, let's just say there was an infestation. I think it's clear now, but... yeah, I'd rather not, thank you. Nell sighed and rolled her eyes. Fine, she said stubbornly, and marched off towards the adjoining door. I'll get the decorations while you find us a suitable tree. And with that, she disappeared into the TARDIS. You know, she won't be happy if you get pine needles and tinsel everywhere, the Doctor called after her. Shaking his head with a grin, he walked around the console, flicking switches and pressing buttons. You know, old girl, he said, fondly placing his hand on the rotor, watching it rise and fall. It's been a while since we've celebrated Christmas. Maybe it's time. He typed in the coordinates for a particularly verdant pine forest that came to mind, and pulled the helmet regulator. After all, he mused, it's the worst that could happen.
And now for something a little bit different. Earlier on in the video, I looked at the 375 Evil of the Daleks set. Now I'm going to be using those Daleks for some very special customs, which will be coming soon. However, just as I was about to take them apart, it made me realise that this is a perfect opportunity to put a new entry in my How to Do series. So, I have previously taken apart several Daleks, including some 375 new series Daleks, but the one thing that I have yet to take apart was a classic 375 Dalek. Until now. So, I'm going to do this and try and do this actually on camera, doing a commentary over it. I don't want to speed it up too much, but let's get straight into this. So obviously, underneath we have Phillips head screws. I may speed this bit up because this can sometimes take a moment to go through. Okay, so we have the base off. Now, the next thing we have is this sphere here. I'm trying to get this on camera. Does come out, and obviously the screw is behind that, but I am going to cheat, and I am going to clip this, if I can, and then get it open that way, because ultimately, basically, now once I've done that, if I can, I don't know if this is going to work, but I will try, I can trim that bit out, so it's not going to hold it open. It's not, basically what that's going to do now is, knocking things over off camera, is what it means now is that it means I haven't got to worry about taking this out, and by not having that there, it's still, once the base is on there, it's still going to hold together. It is a slight cheat and it doesn't keep it in perfect condition, but like me, if you're going to be using this for a custom, then you're not going to have it in perfect condition, so that is the best way of doing it. Now the next one is actually slightly hidden, and it is here. So that's always one that I know a lot of people query and wonder why the top is still screwed. Sometimes on some Daleks it's very well hidden, others not so much. Right. Now, if you want to completely take this apart as well, I'm not going to do it, but obviously here in the base you've got screw here to take out the central first wheel, and then obviously two here to take out these wheels as well. Not going to do that because I don't need to. As I said, I'm going to be using this for a custom. So once you've got that screw out, and you have either got that screw out or clipped that, you should, in theory, be able to take it apart. Now that's something that I was wondering. On the 5-inch Daleks, obviously this piece is a whole piece, but obviously on this it's moulded onto the body. In many ways that is a very good thing because it makes it a lot easier when it comes to putting it back together. Obviously, to get these bits out, you have, in fact, what I should have done first is actually check if I can get that out of its socket, which I can. So plunger comes out, and then out comes those pieces. These are actually really simple to take apart. They're not that different from the new series variants, but I wanted to do the video because I know it's something that when I started doing customs, so that comes out like that, and obviously the other thing as well is that there's that's slightly different, and there's no light on the inside to pop out either, and that's basically it. There you go. It's all apart. It's all in pieces. Now, as I said, the reason that I wanted to do this video is because it's very easy to take apart. As you said, I've just done it in less than, or just over 4 minutes. But the reason that I want to do these videos, and the reason I want to do this, because it's not a particularly long video, but when I was starting doing customs, working out how to take things apart and how to put them back together was very difficult because nobody had really shown how it was done. So I'm hoping that these videos are useful to people. Obviously, putting this back together, I'm not going to show because it is basically very simple. You just do what you've just done in reverse. But I know the one thing that people tend to struggle with the most is getting the body apart. And so, you know, as I said, you can, if you want to try and take this bit out, you can, but the easier way of doing it is just to clip that bit out, make sure you've got that one out, and it will just come apart on its own. Yeah, very quick video, very simple video, but it was a perfect opportunity to do this, so I thought, why not? Well, that almost brings to a close the Captain Jimmy Pie Christmas special, but before I go, it's something that I know many of you have been waiting for. It needs no further introduction. I present to you my Clara tribute TARDIS, live from the workshop. Hello everyone, and welcome to another live from the workshop. So today I'm going to be making a TARDIS, a new TARDIS for my collection, but this is going to be no ordinary TARDIS because, as you can see by the portrait, this is going to be the Clara tribute TARDIS. So the reason that I'm filming the intro here for now is because this is the first one I'm going to be recording in Sweden, and outside it's a little bit windy, and so it's hard to record the intro with the sound outside, so I'm doing it in here. Anyway, so what I've done first of all, obviously, this is a standard 11th Doctor TARDIS. I thought about getting a 12th Doctor one, but this was the cheapest I could find available, and because it's got the black windows, it was looking closer to it was in the episode. So all I've done is repaint the lower windows white, and then I've taken a screenshot of the portrait from the episode, printed it off, and stuck it on. Now comes the hard part. The painting of the outside. This is going to take a while. I may only show some coats, like maybe the first 2 coats of some of it, or I may just sort of show the first coat, because I get the feeling that I'm going to have to do probably maybe 5 or 6 coats for this, and basically it would be very boring if you have to watch me repainting the same things over and over again. So probably what you'll see is the first coat, and then I'll skip the filming of the subsequent coat, but then I will skip ahead to, let's say, painting on the next first coat of something new. You get the idea. So yeah, the first thing to do is going to be to do the painting. Now, what I'm not going to do for now is the base, because this is just a piece of wood that I've got it standing on for now. Basically, obviously, in the episode, it extends out, the design extends out onto the pavement. Now, I'm not going to do that for now. I am going to do, what I plan to do in future is I would love to create a proper diorama for this, which actually has like a nice, a bit of building wall and the actual paving that I can then display it on. But I don't have the space to do that for now, so for now I'm just going to do the TARDIS, but this does mean this is going to be a kind of 2-parter, in the sense that you're going to see the TARDIS done first, and then at a later date you're going to see the base done as well to go with it. But as I said, for now, first things first is to get on with the painting, so let's cut over to me outside, and now you will get me and you will see me get straight on to that now. And so here is my finished Clara tribute TARDIS. Now, before I get on to showing you a bit more, a couple of apologies. One that might not, well, neither of them really matter, but I feel like I can make them anyway. Firstly, I apologise if the light on this is slightly low. I am going to try and brighten up the footage, but the reason I'm doing this is because I'm actually having to record this. It is Christmas Eve, and I have just finished editing this live from the workshop, and I found that this piece of footage, where I showed it off at the end, is slightly corrupted, and unfortunately where I would normally film it is very busy. So I'm having to film it in another room where the lighting's not as good, so I'm going to try and brighten up the footage, but if it's a little bit dim, I apologise for that. The second apology is I'm sorry that you're not going to get to see me painting these flowers up here. Again, unfortunately, that was one of the pieces of footage that got corrupted, but, you know, small mercies. I'm glad that it was these two end pieces that got corrupted and not bits in the middle, because it would have made it very difficult to edit and refilm. Obviously, well, I couldn't refilm it. So yes, but let's get on to looking at it. So I know this is something that I often say a lot, and I know I often say that a lot, and I know I'm often going to say it again many more times, and I know I'm going to say this again, but I am very pleased with how this has come out, because more so than any of my other customs, because this is the first time that I have really managed to do something like this. I mean, I know it's odd because I've done a lot of painting and things like that, but painting with this level of detail, like, you know, on the flowers and the stems and the stalks and the leaves and everything like that, this represents the kind of thing that I'm very good at building things. That's a given. I've always been good at it. I'm not to blow my own trumpet, but it's just something that I've always had a natural talent for. But I have never been artistic in terms of painting or drawing. I can barely draw stick figures, and in terms of painting, I've never been that good at all. So for me, this really represents a personal landmark, a personal step forward in being able to paint this with this level of detail. So obviously I'll do a slow pan if I can. Hopefully I've got enough space in front of the camera. Not hugely, I apologise, I'm going to have to tilt slightly to show it off. That is the problem with doing a TARDIS like this, is obviously it is quite big and it is hard to capture in front of camera, but it's, like I said, it's the small details, like all of the details around these flowers here, and then just the difference in shading and things like that. Like I said, it really does represent quite a personal step forward in terms of customs for me. If you do have a spare TARDIS, like I said, obviously I've done this using the 11th Doctor's TARDIS. Obviously, if you want to use one of the newer 12th Doctor TARDISes, you can. The reason I went for the 11th Doctor TARDIS is because it does have the black windows that I could paint in white. It does just make it stand out and make it look a little bit more different. But if you've got the patience and you aren't bad at painting, I was going to say if you're good at painting, but I'm terrible at painting, but you know, I've still managed to do this okay, I think. This is a great custom stripe because it's a long process. What you've just seen in the video probably totaled to about 3 days worth of recording. And even then, what you've seen there has been a very small part of it. I've cut out bits that I've had to go over. I've had to do several coats and layers of different things. I did consider filming the whole thing, but it gets very difficult at times when doing the simplest of customs, that I've got to record, stop, and then, depending on how much footage I've got, empty the camera, then put it all back, and then start recording again. And if I'd done that with this, it would have really been a very, very difficult thing to film, because ultimately, like I said, if I've got, I mean, just the vines alone, these vines, not even the vines, there's these yellow flowers. I mean, we're talking, for these yellow flowers, this is probably about six coats of very thin paint on here, just because it's the way that the paint works. And again, with the pink flowers, these are at least 3 coats, the vines are 2 coats, the white was 4 coats, there's only ever 2 coats that you see, but the white was 4. When I say 4, I mean the 2 lower ones, and then obviously the shading on top, and then more shading. So yeah, it is a lot of work to do something like this. But what I'm left with now is something that I'm really I'm really pleased with. It's you know, I don't generally like to. People often ask me, you know, what's your favourite custom you've ever done, and I don't generally have favourites because I've got so many to choose from. But this would definitely be in my top 5, I have to say. If I had a top 5, this would definitely be one of them. I don't know what the other 4 are. I know some people are going to ask. I don't know what the other 4 are. So, but yeah, this is definitely one that represents a landmark for me. It's one I thoroughly urge other people to have a go at if they've got the time and the patience. As I said, it does take a long time, but it's ultimately worth it. And as I've also said earlier on in the video, having seen it when I edited the footage, I would have forgotten this otherwise, I do plan, still in future, to make a diorama sort of this, so I'll have the TARDIS with all of the detail on the pavement as well, and then I'm going to build some walls and keep it there because this is one of well, I was going to say one of few. It's one of several customs actually. There's actually a small amount of them, but this is one that my partner has not objected to having on display somewhere. But that's only if I build the diorama. So if I want to have this on proud display in a non-me area in future, I do have to build the display, so the display will be coming soon. And that brings to a close another Captain Jimmy Pie Christmas special. I hope you have all had a very Merry Christmas, and I hope you have an excellent New Year. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, favourite, subscribe, share, it really helps me a lot, and be sure to check out the description below for a link to my Patreon. There will be a video coming up soon before the new year about the exclusive content and rewards coming soon, so be sure to stay tuned for that. I salute you all, and I will see you with another video very soon.